Hello, everybody. Oh, there we go. There I am. We're here today to talk about the Patriotic Rusviet faction board combination, as well as a couple others. So let's dive right into it. Patriotic Rusviet is the current Tier 0 and only best faction board combination still allowed in the game. You have two potential openers when it comes to Patriotic Rusviet. And so we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of each and what they look like. The first one we're going to talk about is the more consistent and more reliable one. We'll talk about the pros and cons of each afterwards and analyze when you should go for each of them, because you should never go for 100% one or 100% the other. We'll talk about the reasons for going for one over the other, but we're going to discuss why we're doing certain things and what we're doing for each of these openings. First opening is this one. We start with a trade for 2 oil. Then our second action, we coin gain and we upgrade. Bolster cost of mechs, move cost of mechs, it does not matter. Then we trade for oil again. And then we coin gain again. Now this may seem slow, but we'll talk about the benefits of this in a second. And then produce. So we've reduced the cost of our mechs down to 2, reducing the requirement to produce all 4 of our mechs from 16 cost all the way down to 8 cost. We also, with 2 produce actions getting up to 5 workers, enable ourselves to get our first mech out with just the resources we got from our produce. Take a look at our checkmark required things we have to do. We have to upgrade our move. We have to deploy our speed, but we have reduced the cost of mechs in order to get to the point where we will be able to do that. With this current faction board combination, we want to get onto food, because deploying and enlisting are the 2 strongest options for us. And look at that. 2 oil and 1 popularity is a strong option. $2 for an upgrade is comparable. Pay $2 for 3 resources is also comparable. All of these will effectively do the same thing. This is a strong option, obviously, since we get to take this upgrade action. And this upgrade action is huge. Third upgrade is generally always going to be bolster combat cards, and then we actually get to reduce the cost of mechs down to 1. Which means the 3 produces we need to get the 12 food that we need to complete our enlists is going to get us 3 steel. How much steel do we need to complete the rest of our mechs? We need 3 steel. So 3 produce actions will get us all the steel we need. We're actually going to end up with an extra steel because we have to produce once on a territory with 3 workers to get up to the required 8 workers. But this is the early game with Rusviet Patriotic in the Type 1. We will take a look at the second opener right now. Second way to play Rusviet Patriotic, diving into it right now. Second way to play Rusviet Patriotic starts the same way. We trade for oil. This is the only common action that we're going to take. Now we produce. Now we produce. Now we move. one worker onto steel and our character onto our village. And we use the oil we got, to upgrade. And our upgrade is move and cost of mechs. Now we produce. We bolster power, and we deploy our Riverwalk mech. And we're just going to go one more action, just because it isn't so simple. This last move is essential. And we move. Is this right? No, it isn't right. You can either trade for oil or you can move. But part of the benefit of this line is that you do actions quickly. So you can either do this move, or you can do a variation where you put an extra worker onto the food, and then you pick up this encounter. And this one recruit is stronger in this line than it is in the other line, because we're taking more produce actions early, less later. So I would actually consider doing this here. But this is the other opening, basically. Pretty hard and fast produce here. And just pay expensive prices to do these things much more quickly. Produce and bolster. Less time spent on upgrading. So we're going to talk about these actions now. Alright, let's talk about the pros and cons to each of those openings. First opening, we're talking about the 5-worker opening, which starts out with the 2 upgrades quickly. Tier 2 popularity is a strong option for that setup. Tier 2 popularity isn't as strong with Type 1 as it is with Type 2. However, having access to it is very, very nice. It has strong encounter options. We were talking about the upgrades. A building would also be strong. Basically everything strong except for deploying a mech. And with the extra popularity, dud encounters that are like $2 and 1 popularity are still good. You get maximum efficiency with your production because you are going to be taking all of the produce actions for all of the resources every time, as opposed to the other opening when you get 8 workers out quickly and you're not going to actually be taking extra produce actions, you're just going to be taking bottom row and list actions because you have extra food already. And you get more coins this way. You don't have to produce and pay coins, and you don't have to produce and pay popularity. That's basically it. You save coins and popularity, and you get bonus production. The second opening, the pros, it's a faster opening. We were actually a turn faster in completing our opening. We also got our 8 worker star out. You get a better 16 power star because you're taking less total produce actions to get more resources. It's faster since you don't get the trades for oil. You will typically get 1 upgrade though. I didn't show that in that game, but you will typically have to trade for oil. I did actually show it, didn't I? You do get 1 upgrade, move, and cost of mechs, but then you brute force it from there. You're going to control more territory since you have your workers out early, and you're going to end games more quickly. Since you're Rusviet and you can take actions multiple times in a row, you're not really concerned about being the speed of your bottom row action stars because you can do them quickly at any time you choose. So you can still go deploy and list in the second opening. You just take less direct produce actions, you pay a little bit more in popularity and coins, and in turn you get a little bit of speed. So you think about when you will want to do each of these. Let's say you have no viable objective star. Which one would you rather go for? Like, both your objectives are completely undoable. Well, if you think about it, we have access to a star here, better 16 power star, because we're only going to be paying like 2 combat power for our producing, as opposed to the 4 power that it's going to take for the first opening. So the second opening has a pro there, easier star. Since we don't have the objective star, we might need access to this. Since we're not getting the objective star, I mean, the second opening pros apply to a lot of things. Mostly if you need a 6 star and you can't figure out where you're going to get it, it's a little better to do it this way. But typically with the Patriotic Rusviet faction board combination, you don't have problems getting 6 stars. And that's the reason I generally prefer the slower trade option for the first opening, is because you will still get up to 16 power frequently with the first opening, especially if you get your enlisting combat power for upgrades out early enough. You can very easily get 16 power with the first opening. So generally I find the pros of the second opening is just that it's faster and it will end the game faster. So if you're up against some other Type 1 faction board combinations, you have Patriotic Rusviet, let's say there's Crimea Mechanical or Polania Mechanical, that's going for a Type 1 faction board win. The second opening will allow you to win faster and thus be able to get you your stars more quickly. Saying the same thing twice. So do this against other Type 1s. If you're the only Type 1, always go for first opening. In my opinion, that's just the way to go. I know a lot of people will disagree. I know some people who swear by second opening, but that's that. And now we're going to get into talking about the next best faction board combination, Crimea Mechanical. Alright, we're here talking about Crimea Mechanical, the next best faction board combination after Rusviet. Let's dive right into it. Now, Crimea Mechanical is just ridiculously strong, and it always starts the same way. We start with the produce action. Then we trade for 2 food. And this is just because of our faction ability. We really want to get this first enlist out. So we produce combat cards, everything to do with combat cards. And this is basically the strongest start that Crimea can have outside of Patriotic Crimea, which gets faster in this, which is insane. And now, there's some variations on what you can do, but typically my recommendation is to trade for 2 oil, and then we can circumvent the slow speed of our board by upgrading move and deploy cost. And this is a build that I've taken some time to think about, so just bear with me as we go through this. Now we're going to move 3 workers onto food. We're not going to move our character at all. Kind of funky, right? We're also going to be using combat cards down the line. And now we take a look at what our opponent's doing. He's getting buildings, and we're getting deployment at some point. Typically you want to choose either the upgrade power or deploy coins, and then it'll take the other combat bonus. So in this case, we're going to default to deploy coins. That gets us a combat card back, which we can now use and trade for 2 oil. 2 oil plus a combat card gets us bolster upgrade combined with deploy cost upgrade. Now our game plan is simple. We're going to get 16 Power Star. We're going to get all our mechs out. We're going to get all our enlists out. Again, going back to our objective discussion, taking a look at these are both in the don't bother category, so since we don't have an objective star in this game, we would have to alter our plan a little bit. Now we produce one more time, this gets us up to 8 workers, and it gets us 4 more food. Since we still want to hold on to that last combat card, we get the other option from these. Except we're not upgrading anymore, and he's still building. So in this case, we would actually go for the popularity. This is a 2-player game. Things change a lot in a 2-player game. Usually it's always right to do this or this and then the other one because you have 2 neighbors. In this game it would be very different. You don't typically get this quickly because usually 0 to 1 players are going for buildings adjacent to you. Whereas 1 to 2 people are going for these, especially early on in the game. So we've got the trades we need, and now we actually have this option to bolster and deploy for just a combat card, our speed mech. And that's the opener. Now you can tell we can move out, pick up our encounter here. We have our 8 workers. We can actually produce from here. It's not a big deal to produce once here to get the steel that we need to not have to pay combat cards and finish our enlists at the same time. So we're going to produce one more time, as you can see. Just give you a little preview. So how much steel do we need to complete? We need 3 more steel. Drop 3 steel there. Character there. And pick up the encounter. And that is the end of the early game. Hope you guys enjoyed. What's up, everybody? We're here talking about the final faction board combination that we're talking about in this video. The second best tier 1 faction after Crimea Mechanical. We're talking about Rusviet Mechanical. Rusviet Mechanical can't cheat the upgrades quite the same as Crimea Mechanical, so it has a bit of slowness to it. This slowness cannot really be averted. You really do need to be getting out both your upgrades here. So, saying that, we actually open on trade for oil. Then we can trade for oil again, upgrade. Now the question is, what do we upgrade? Generally, I consider bolster power, cost of deployment. We don't actually have to trade for our next upgrade here. We can, but we don't have to. I generally would. Move. And cost to enlist. Then we produce. And now we're basically patriotic. We have some added benefit with certain encounters that we pick up, like $2 for any 3 resources. We can get 3 wood to build a building. We have that option. Let's finish up our early game by getting our Riverwalk mech, and that'll do it. This is our opener. Very, very simple. Get our upgrades, get our worker count, get our Riverwalk mech, and then we get on to our mid-game where we play the typical patriotic style of produce, bolster, and then eventually get up to 8 workers. And pick up these encounters along the way.